We are going to jump into week 2 of winning with money. We started this series last week. We compared it to eating some of those things that we really don't like but are good for you, right? I call that salad. I don't know about you. You can pick your own. Those things that they're not our favorite to eat, but we know that they're good for us. And we were reminded that you can't just have the feel-good candy, but you've got to have your protein first, right? And if you missed that reference, go back and check last week's message out on YouTube, and you'll find out that my 5-year-old nephew was preaching to me that you've got to have your protein first. See, this series isn't just about tithing and giving and the church needs money and the pastor wants money. This is about us growing and maturing as Christians, and it's beginning to change our mindsets and our habits, not just in the church, but in our everyday life and the decisions we make, because who we are in church doesn't matter if we're not the same person outside of church. What drew people to Jesus is that he was authentic. They were drawn and they were saying, man, you're not doing things like the other rabbis. You're not doing things that these other teachers are doing of the time. They were drawn to him because who Jesus was the same every single day. And we're called to be the same, not only on Sunday and not only with some people, but with every person. We're called to be the same. This series is about shifting our mindset and our habits in every area of our life with finances. And last week we had this sky-high view where we looked at what it takes. We talked about you give, you save, and then you pay. Whether that's your bills or whether that's buying things that you saved for. We had this sky-high view. And again, this is coming not just only from the Bible, and it's not coming from a pastor. This is coming from Dave Ramsey's course, Financial Peace, where he teaches on stewardship. He is a financial advisor. This is somebody who deals with money and helps people get out of debt and live in prosperity or live in well-being anyways. For a living, this is what he does, and we are teaching some of the principles that he gives so that we can understand how to win with money. So this week, we're going to come a little bit lower. We're going to come in for a bird's eye view. And we're not going to pull up in front of your houses. I'm not going to have you in a couple weeks say, okay, everybody, now bring your bank statements. We're going to look and see who's really paying their tithe at the church, right? We're not going to look at your personal finances in this series, but we do want to be able to give you the tools you need and the biblical principles you need that you can go and look and say, okay, this is what we have, and this is what the Bible teaches, and this is what comes from financial advisors, and with this is what we have, we can plug this in, and you can walk out of here equipped to look at what you have and begin to win with money. So today we're going to jump in on week 2, plan together, win together. Whether you're talking about eating an elephant or reading through the whole Bible in a year, whether you set out to learn something new or we're talking about winning with money, one of the things that will help us to stay on course when a journey is long, when something is going to take a while to get there, one of the things that will help us stay on course, to not get discouraged, to not give up, to say, is it making a difference? Does it really matter? One of the keys to winning with money is having a plan and sticking to it, right? That concept about sticking to it hopefully sounds familiar to you because that's exactly what he talked about yesterday in the Bible in 1 year. He talked about sticking to it through those long journeys, right? A plan can be the difference between staying where we are and reaching where we want to be. Sometimes we reach this place where we're in a spot and we know that we want to be there, but we never make a plan to get there. We never change habits. We never change anything. And that want to be is always this dream that never seems real. It never seems attainable. It never seems like that could actually happen. By creating a plan, we can turn that dream into a reality. By creating a plan and sticking to it, we can actually find a way to get from where we are to one day being where right now we can only dream of getting there. But when we talk about a plan begins when we identify where we're at. Right, I remember growing up. Now we've got GPS, and Kayla uses the Google Maps. I like the iPhone Maps, right? And so we go somewhere, and I'll pull it up on my phone, and we'll check things out. But I remember the days before it was on everybody's phone, and it would be MapQuest, right? And before you go on the trip, my dad would get on the computer, and he'd go to MapQuest, and he'd type it in, and this is where we're starting in Akron, Indiana, and then he'd type in, this is where we're going, wherever that was, and then it would print off 20 different pages of directions, and so you'd have to flip through every page to see the directions. You had to make sure you were keeping track of it. But the plan started with where you are, and it identified where you want to go. And when we begin with our finances, we've got to be honest and say, well, this is where I am. I've got this much debt. I've got this many things right now that I've got to pay for. I've got this much reality because I've got this many mouths to feed, and this is my job, and this is how much I make right now. Not the job that I think I want to have, not the job and the finances that I want to make, but this is where I am right now. And we've got to identify what's gotten us to this point. What are my spending habits? Am I eating out 7 times a week? Am I spending $500 going out to eat every month? Am I going out to the movie so many times? What has gotten me to here? Where am I and what's got me here? And then for our plan to continue, it's where do I want to be? Identifying it and setting that goal and what changes need to be made to get there. But there's one question more important than both that you will answer that'll change everything with finances. More important than where you are, more important than where you want to be is the question, why? Why do you want to be there? Why is that your goal? Why did you make that your goal? Is your final goal, you say that one day I want to be debt-free? Do you say, well, I want to own my property, I want to own my own house, I want to own a business, I want to be a millionaire? Any of those are fine. Money is a tool, right? It's amoral. It is neither good nor bad. As long as we put God first, no matter what your goal is, that's fine, as long as you put God first. But the question becomes, why is that your goal? Is that your goal because you want people to look at you, because you want people to think you're rich, because you want to be acknowledged, or is that your goal because you dream of having a greater impact on the kingdom of God? Is it your goal because you want to have a different life for your kids, that you don't want your kids to have to live paycheck to paycheck, and so you're going to begin to change your lifestyle to make it more stress-free so that your kids can enjoy and know a life that you never have? Are you doing it to break family cycles? Knowing why you're sacrificing and what changes you're making and knowing why you're doing it will help you to keep the path. Having a goal, knowing where you want to be, is not going to keep you there when you get in the middle of it and you're driving a beater car and you're getting tired of it and you're trying to figure out what in the world is going on, when you have to give up movies and Starbucks and you're frustrated at how long it's taking. Knowing the goal is not going to help you to stay on track, but knowing why. Knowing that I am doing this because I'm going to make a difference in my family. I'm going to make a difference in the lives of those around me. I'm going to make a difference in the kingdom of God. Whatever your why is what's going to help you to stay on track. Once you've identified where you are and where you want to be, and most importantly, why you're making these changes with your finances, then a plan becomes the map that'll get you from A to B, and the why becomes what will keep you on course. A plan will help you finish what you start. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 3. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. All right, we read Matthew chapter 6, verse 33 last week, and we were reminded to put God and His kingdom first, and then everything else will be given to you. Right? God also must come first in our plans. When we talk about our plans, we can't just this is what, when we make our plans, just like we put God first in everything else, we put God first in our plan, and when we seek after Him, When we say, God, what is it that you want? God, I want to honor you. God, I want to be a good steward. God, I want what you have. Then in those moments, as we put him first and we make a plan and we say, because this is what I believe God is doing, this is going to be my plan. And then God will bless that plan. He will establish it. He will make it his own. When we make our own plans, we can find ourselves standing against God. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1 says, "Woe to the obstinate children, declares the Lord, to those who carry out plans that are not mine, forming an alliance, but not by my spirit, heaping sin upon sin." All right, sometimes we are asking God to bless us. God, I want you to bless my finances. God, I want you to bless my life. God, I want you to bless my health. But the way that we're living is not honoring God. We're not putting God first. We're putting other things first. We're not stewarding well. We're not tithing. We're chasing after our desires. We're chasing after more money. We're chasing after sometimes even the things we need from Matthew chapter 6. We're chasing after the clothes, the food, the things that are very real in life. But instead of chasing after the God who provides, we chase after the things that we want him to provide. And we're putting the wrong things first. We're not prioritizing church. We're not prioritizing God in our marriage. We're not prioritizing God in our life. We're chasing after other things, but we come to God and say, God, would you bless me? God, would you give this to me? And God is looking at it and he says, I can't, because right now you are standing against me. We put other things before God, all the while asking God to bless our pursuits. But when we will plan with God first in mind, when we will put him first in our plans, when we will put him first in our life, then he will begin to bring those plans to pass. When we prioritize him, God will begin to put everything else into place. Winning with money is a long-term process. This isn't something that we started last week and now all of a sudden you guys walked in today and you're millionaires. This isn't something that for most of us, we're going to be able to say that we start today and we come in even next year and that everything has been transformed. Very few of us are able to start from that place. It's a long-term process, not just one time or a few months, but a plan helps us to keep the course. A plan helps us to keep perspective. A plan helps us to keep in mind and see that we're making progress. Proverbs 21:5. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. Last week we mentioned two different things. We talked about discipline and we talked about faithfulness. A plan is only as good as how disciplined you are to follow it, right? If you turn on your GPS but you never listen, it's not going to get you where you want to go. If you create a plan but you don't follow it, it's not going to make a difference. Nicky Gumbel's introduction yesterday to the Bible in 1 year. He put this, he said, observe the postage stamp. Its usefulness depends on its ability to stick to one thing until it gets there. Sometimes we miss out on what we're praying for. Sometimes we miss out on what God's wanting to do. Sometimes we miss out on the transformation of our finances, of our life, of our biblical understanding. Sometimes we miss out on the blessings of God because we won't stick to it until the end. Things get hard. We go through the ringer. It's not going as fast as we want. We begin to question if it's working. And God is saying that if you will just stick to it until the end, you'll see it get where you want to be. When we talk about our finances, there's going to be some times where we're going to question it. It may not be happening as quick as we want. Things are going to be going on, and we're going to have to make a decision that, God, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this, and this is why. And we go back to that why, and once we know the why, we just stick to it. Okay, God, I remember this is why I'm doing this. Help me to stick to it a little bit longer, knowing that if I do this, it may not look like it very quickly, but I am making progress, and one day I'm going to get there. When you're diligent, when you're disciplined, when you are faithful, eventually you're going to see the plan begin to profit. Now, part of diligence, part of following a plan is adjusting that plan. Right? Sometimes we're driving down the road and there's an accident or there's a detour or there's construction, and we've got to adjust our plans to keep moving forward. Sometimes you're going to start out and you're going to say, all right, this is my plan, this is where I'm at, and this is where I want to be, and this is where I'm going, and something's going to happen along the way, and the car breaks down, or something happens, and you got to take the dog to the vet, or whatever is going on, and something happens that you're not expecting, and all of a sudden you're going to have to adjust your plan. That wasn't in there before, but we adjust our plan so that we can keep moving forward. Proverbs chapter 27, verses 23 and 24. Be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. For riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations. Right, as we're talking here, this is King Solomon writing through the Proverbs, and he's reminding us, just because we've got wealth now, just because we've got a plan now, doesn't mean that tomorrow that plan is going to be secure if something happens and we don't adjust. Just because there's a family in this day and time that they held the kingship and they held the authority, it doesn't mean that if they didn't continue to do things right, that somebody else couldn't be king one day. Proverbs is reminding us, just as we go to doctors, just as we go to dentists for checkups, spiritually, we must have checkups. We need to check our hearts. We need to check ourselves. And we even need to check our finances regularly. And I'm not saying that you've got to worry about your finances. You've got to check your bank account every 10 minutes to make sure that somebody's not stolen your identity and stolen your debit card and gotten your information. I'm not saying you've got to worry about it and check it every moment, but you need to have a plan to give careful, regular attention to your finances, to make sure, are my habits that I'm changing staying where I want them to? Am I doing what I say I want to do? Am I prioritizing what I say I want to prioritize? Because we can say something's important to us, and we can say something matters, but the two things that show us whether it's true or not is our time and our money. How are we spending our time? What do we schedule things around? Are we scheduling things around church, or are we scheduling church around other things? And, well, I can't make it to church this week because this is going on, or I'm tired, or I'm busy. What is our time? What is our priority? Same with our finances. Are we giving to the church? Are we giving to these things that we say that matter? Are we giving to whatever? Or do we not have enough because we've got all these other things, but we're buying extra things? Taking care of our finances is checking the herd. Is every sheep where it's supposed to be? Is anything missing? Is one of them sick? And maybe this part of my budget's gotten a little out of budget or a little out of balance, and I'm spending a little too much here. Or maybe this one's getting a little skinny. He's not getting fed quite enough. He looks like Pastor Seth up there. All right, and we need to fatten him up with some fry bread, right? We need to look at our herd, and we need to check our budget and have a way to care for it, to make sure that everything is in place. Another part of caring for your finances and what God's trust you with is doing things in order. Right? As we make a financial plan, we've got to make sure that you do things in order. Right? You've got to be able, if you're going to climb up a ladder, you're going to climb up some steps, you've got to go one step at a time. Right? If you skip building the middle 5 steps, then you're not going to be able to get up to that next one when you want to. There's an order to make things. Things like we give, we save, we pay. Things like your 4 walls, and I'll apologize now. You're going to have to go back to last week's notes and make some corrections because I messed up. Right? Proof that your pastor isn't perfect, and I tell you that regularly. But last week, I think I told you, I said food, shelter, utilities, and transportation. The 4 walls are actually food, shelter, clothing, and transportation. Your utilities are a part of your shelter. But the 4 things, when we talk about order, right? We get our paycheck, we give, We save, we set aside money for ourselves, and then we pay. There's order to how things are done so that we can win with money. And when we go to that pay, the reality is maybe there's months and we say money's tight and I can't pay for everything. And so we've got to prioritize what am I going to do this month? And we always do things in order. We take care of our food, making sure that we've got food on the table. We take care of our shelter, making sure that our house is taken care of. We take care of our clothing, making sure winter's coming in. Do I have the clothes that I need? Do I have what I need? And we take care of our transportation, our vehicle, to make sure we can get the food, we can get the clothes, we can get to work so that we can pay for our shelter. We do things in order. When you make your plans, make sure you identify, and if you need help, get help identifying what needs to be done in order. Right, here's some things that Dave Ramsey recommends. Number one, save $1,000 in your bank as a start in case of emergency. This isn't going to be a full emergency fund. You'll get to that later. But right now, the first step to be able to do things in order, put $1,000 in the bank and don't touch it. Unless it's an emergency, it stays there. And it may not pay for anything. You may have something happen in the car and it costs $2,000. Well, if you've got $1,000 in emergency, now this $2,000 emergency is only a $1,000 emergency because you've got $1,000 set aside already. Right? So step one, $1,000 in your bank account. Step two, pay off all of your debts. Debt is not normal. Debt is not what we want. And we're going to dive into debt next week and talk more about what the Bible says. But the second step is pay off all of your debts. And the way to do this is imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. It starts out small, and as it goes down, it gets bigger. You start with your smallest debt, you pay it off, and then you go to the next smallest, and you go to the next smallest, and you do whatever it takes to get out of debt as quick as you possibly can. Step number three, you save 3 to 6 months of expenses in case of emergency. Something happens at work, you get sick, something goes wrong, heaven forbid, COVID comes back, and you're not having to wait and hope and pray for the government to give you relief because you've already set money aside in savings, and so you know that for the next 3 to 6 months, however much you set aside, that you're going to be okay. Something happens and you're not able to go to work for a period of time. You're not having to figure out how you're going to take care of your family because you've already set money aside and you know that for the next 6 months, my family's going to be okay. And before you reach the end of that 6 months, hopefully you're feeling better and you're able to get along. But if not, even if you have to get assistance, if you have to do something else, if you have to change plans depending on what happens in our lives, you've now got a buffer that's there, that's been put in place to help you in those times. And then you begin to plan for your kids' college. You plan to pay off your home. You plan for retirement. You plan to live generously. We create a plan, but we do things in order. Proverbs 24:27, put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. All right, if you build your house during planting season, then you might finish your house sooner, but then by the time you get to harvest, you're not going to have anything to make it through the winter. There are times in life where some things are glaring in front of us and it says, well, this seems to be the most important. This seems to be the biggest thing. We've got to figure this one out. But the reality is if we take care of this one because it's screaming at us and it's yelling at us and we ignore this one over here and say, well, this one's going to matter in a few months a little bit more than it does now. But if we don't take care of this one now while it's small, then when time it matters, it's going to be too late. There's an order to doing things. If you build your house during planting season, come harvest, you won't have anything. Some things may seem less important than others now, but if you don't address them now while you can, it'll be too late when they do come. Create a plan with order. Right? Creating a plan can change everything. Plans will make your money go farther. Right? I don't know about you, but Kayla and I, we go grocery shopping, and if we ever go grocery shopping without a list, it's like, yeah, we need that. We need those little Debbies. We need to have this. Yeah, I knew when I walked in, I knew I needed that extra blender, so I'm gonna grab this one now, and oh, that looks really good, right? And if we go out in without a plan, we're just buying everything. Right? You just buy, but if you go in with a plan, especially if you're a man, I don't know if you know this, men and women shop differently. Kayla will shop, and if we're on a day off and she's like, let's go to the mall, and we go to Albuquerque, she will just walk through aisles. She's just enjoying her time. If I'm going shopping, I'm like, all right, give me the list. Aisle 7. Sometimes I'll even write it out ahead of time. I know this is in this aisle, and we're on a mission. The only store I don't do that in is Home Depot. But Kayla, I get to be Kayla in that time, right? But a plan, it changes everything. A plan makes our money go farther because we already say, okay, well, I came in for this, and that's not on the list. I've got a plan that this is what I'm going to do with my money this month, and this is where this much money is going to go, and this much is going to go into the church, and this much is going to go into my savings, and this much is going to go for the kids, and this much is going to go. And we say, well, I've got a plan, and that over there is not a part of the plan, so it's not going to come in. And that plan will actually help your money go farther. Plan moves response by crisis. Those emergencies come up. Something happens. The kid is growing through 2 sizes a month, and now we've got to buy new clothes. When we have a plan, we're no longer managing by crisis, but we're saying, okay, we knew this was going to happen. They're getting ready to go through puberty. They're 5 months old. They change every 2 months, right? We've got a plan that says we know that this is going to happen, and it removes that response by crisis. It'll remove stress from your life. Plans will remove fights. If you're married, one of the greatest causes of divorce is money. When you have a plan for how you're going to handle that money, it'll remove the fights of why did you buy this, or why did you do this, or why did you spend that? Because you have a plan, and we'll get to this next part in a moment, that you worked on together, and it'll remove fights. Plans remove fear of what am I going to do and how am I going to take this, and we're no longer living in fear of what's going to happen with our money because we've got a plan for our money. Plans remove guilt and shame from those times where when we plan to buy something that we want, and we've already gave, and we've already saved, so we don't have to feel guilty about buying something for ourselves because it was a part of the plan, and we've saved up for it, and we've worked, and we don't have to feel guilty about buying something for ourselves. We don't have to be ashamed of trying to buy things. It also removes that shame of not being able to buy things. Because sometimes that money runs out before we get to something because we didn't have a plan and we didn't have an order. And so we bought things that were wants before we bought the need. And that plan helps us to say, nope, I've got an order. These things come first. And it removes that shame of being there and not being able to afford something or not being able to get it. Here are 3 money planning tips. Number 1, time, poverty, and fatigue will lead to poor money management. Time, poverty, and fatigue will lead to poor money management. Right? When Kayla and we've done really good about this for the last month, when we're making that trip to Walmart and we've learned to make a list, we've also learned that we make it early. Because when I'm walking into Walmart, it's not my favorite trip of the week. It's stressful. And I don't even go to Gallup Walmart. This is Grant's Walmart, right? But it's stressful. And we go in there, and if I'm trying to figure out what I want to eat when I'm in there, and I'm trying to figure it out in the car driving down there, then I'm already stressed trying to go in there. But when I plan ahead of time, when I use my time before it needs to be done, then it relieves that stress. The same thing happens with our finances when we'll plan with plenty of time. Not coming down to the last minute, not trying to figure it out, but creating a plan ahead of time, it'll help relieve that poor management. Poverty, those times where maybe it's a tight month. Right? There were times before I came to the church where I was living in Yatahe where I had a $300 truck payment because my truck broke down. I had full insurance coverage on it, so that was $400 for the truck every single month. Plus, that thing was not friendly on gas, so there's probably another $60 or $100 right there. And so I'm almost $500 in, and there's a month where I might get paid $700, and $500 of it's gone already. And figuring out how in the world are we going to make $200? But I lived off a lot of $1 banquet meals. That's what I did, microwavable banquet meals, right? But it's learning when we're tight with money, it creates stress. And we can, in that stress, respond and make poor decisions. And so it's creating a plan helps us to alleviate the poor decisions. And fatigue, being tired. When we're tired after we've had a 12-hour day at work or something's gone on or whatever's going on, right? Money will never be your favorite part of the month, but it will always be one of the most important parts when you sit down and you talk about how are we going to handle this. Don't do it in a rush. Don't do it in the last minute. And don't do it when you're ready to crawl into bed and you can't think straight. Right? Give it the time it needs. Plan well to win well. Tip number 2, beware of impulse. Impulse can come from stress. It can come from excitement. It can come from I owe it to myself or I deserve it. Those are the enemy of your money. I owe it to myself and I deserve it. I've worked hard for it. If you've not planned for it, then don't do it. Don't cave in to impulse, right? You don't go hungry when you're shopping because everything looks good. Don't make big purchases when you're under stress. Pray, pray, pray. I know that there are times where things can happen in life. The car breaks down. The car's got to be replaced. I'm talking about me in February. We just went through this, figuring out what in the world are we going to do because we don't have a vehicle. And how are we going? There are times where things may happen in your life where you've got to make a decision fairly quickly, within a week or a matter of days or whatever that case would be. But don't rush a decision ever, especially something as big as that. Always take time to pray. Always take time to step back. Kayla and I, we sought counsel. We were calling her parents, my parents. We were talking to people when my truck broke down the first time. When I first moved out here, I was talking to Pastor Steve. I was talking to Pastor Bob. I was talking to Pastor Randy. I was talking to my parents. I was talking to anybody that I thought had more wisdom than me, which was a lot of people, right? Wisdom is found among many counselors. Don't rush to make a decision from stress. Don't rush to make a decision from excitement. Sometimes we get excited about something. We think, man, if I just had this, like, think of all the things I could do. Think of what this is going to do. And we get excited about it, and we go out and we make a rush decision, and then it sits in a box in the corner for the rest of eternity. Right? Don't make a decision when we're stressed or excited. Create a plan that says when I'm excited about something, I've got this brilliant idea, I'm going to wait a week. I'm going to wait 2 weeks. I'm going to wait this amount of time. I'm going to do whatever before I make that purchase. Because then we can calm down, we can process, we can think. Don't let stress or excitement lead us to make decisions. Have a plan, follow the plan. Planning tip number 3, create a plan together. This will transform your life. This will transform your family. If you're married, this means that you and your spouse both need to give input. There is no option that when we're married that one person can say, well, I want to do this, and the other says, well, do whatever you want. When you make purchases, when you make a plan, you talk together. Because what happens is if you're not in it together and one person tells the other, well, you can do whatever you want, that's fine, that'll work, but that means that together you both need to make some sacrifices to make this happen, and the one spouse told the other they can do it, but then that same spouse goes and does something over here and completely throws off the plan, then there's hard feelings. Because, well, you said that we could do this, but then you went and spent that money over there, and now we can't do this. We need to do it together. There is no option for one spouse to tell the other to do whatever you want. Now, one spouse can make the general plan, but the other spouse needs to give input, they need to make changes, and then both spouses together must commit to that plan. Maybe today you're not married, but for our area, it's not uncommon to have multiple generations living together. Whether in one home or whether on a property, we've got families that live together within the home. And anytime you've got a family that lives together, whether it's certain bills, whether it's living in the home together, when we're tied together as a family, everyone involved in finances. I'm not saying that you've got to get your 10-year-old kid who earns $10 for chores to come in and sit on this planning meeting, but anybody who is involved in any way with the house, with the bills, with anything, or that one person thinks should be involved, right? Maybe you own the house and you've got kids or grandkids or whatever, and you say, well, they're not helping or they're not doing anything, and it's creating tension in the house. It's because there may be unmet expectations because you're not communicating your plan. Everyone that's involved needs to agree to a plan on some level. What is expected of who? Even if it's agreed. Hey, you can stay here and it's free. You don't have to worry about it. But hey, if you can chip in for gas, or you can chip in for groceries, or you can do this, and it needs to be not just an if you in general, but there needs to be specifics. Because sometimes what happens is we create a general and like, oh, you can do this when you want or if you want. And if that person never wants because you said if you want, then technically they're doing what you've given them permission to do, even by not giving anything, even if it's creating stress for you because you're expecting them to do it. You need to have a plan about who does, or be very clear if there is no expectation. Sometimes person A expects person B to do Z with their finances. We expect them to help with the groceries. We expect them to help with the gas bill once a month or every other month or whatever, since they live there. But person B thinks that A is just taking care of it. They're thinking A's got it all under control. Plan together and then communicate that plan and any expectations you have, and you will win together. We must plan together to win together. See, in your family, in your homes, in your marriage, finances cannot be an off-limit topic. This has got to be something where everybody is involved. This cannot be, again, one spouse does it and says, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. Both spouses need to be involved. Anybody in the family who lives together, anybody who's there, a part of whatever, needs to be involved. Can they be awkward? Absolutely. You're going to sit down, especially if you're a multi-generational family coming together and living in a house word and talking about, well, so-and-so makes this much and they've got this and that. And you can figure out the dynamics of how you want that meeting to go, what information you guys want to share. But open communication and a plan working together will remove the behind-the-scenes tension. It'll remove the aggression. It'll remove fights. It'll remove awkwardness that may technically be about something else. And we're upset and we're fighting about this, but the root of it all is because we've got some disagreements about finances in the background, and that stress over here is lashing out over here. Open communication and a plan together. Whether a husband and wife, a family of 4, or a family of 4 generations, every adult in a home needs to communicate. Every person that's working needs to know what's expected of them. We need to plan together to win together. As each of us begins to put God first in our plans, this is my prayer for us today. Psalm chapter 20, verse 4. May God give you the desire of your heart and make all your plans succeed. That's my prayer for you today, that as you learn and begin to say that God is going to be first in my life and in every area of my life, my marriage, my family, and my plans, what I plan around, and my finances, that as you commit to making God first, my prayer is that He would bless your plans, that He would care for you and open the door and make those plans succeed. We've been talking, last week we introduced that sky-high view of this plan. We talked the 3 general steps of a plan that are going to help you begin to win with money. As we take this again from Dave Ramsey's course, step 1, you give. Giving is planting a seed. You cannot reap what you do not harvest. And so the first thing you always do is you plant a seed. You give. You save. You invest into yourself. And then you pay. And we said we're going to encourage each and every person, wherever you are, that you would take one step in this journey. And maybe that means if you're not giving, and you've got a home church, if you've got a home church somewhere else, then this goes to your home church. If this is your home church, then you can give here. But if you're not giving, we encourage you, take one step and begin to tithe. Give 1/10 and see if God won't provide. Matthew chapter 6, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. When we put God first, God will provide and do the miraculous every single time. So I want to encourage you, if you're not giving, take a step of faith. Begin to give a tithe every single time you get paid. Give that 1/10. Make it the first paycheck. Make it the first thing that you do. You can give online, whatever it is, do that first. If you're doing that, we want to encourage you to take one more step of faith, step from tithe into offering. And we want to encourage you, and we're encouraging for our church that you would specifically give to missions. Right now, we support 6 missionaries. You can see them on our missions wall in the back. My dream is that by this time next year, we'll be supporting at least 12, that we will have doubled our mission support in a year. And so if you're already giving your tithe, we would encourage you to take one step into offering. Begin to give. For $25 a month, we can begin to partner with a missionary. And $25 is going to be a sacrifice for some of us, but it can be a life-changing for a missionary who the moment they step on the field, they begin to minister, and somebody comes to know Jesus because we gave $25. $25 a month can help somebody to come to know Jesus. We partner with missions. Is it a sacrifice? Yes. And it's not just once a month, but it's that faithfulness. It's doing it month after month. It's that discipline that we build up. And so if you're not tithing, take one step. Begin to tithe and see if God doesn't continue to take care of your family and provide. If you're tithing, step into offering. $25 a month in missions. We do our missions offering the first Sunday of every month. We pray over our missionaries. We collect that offering one time a month. And if you're already doing that, then I want to invite you into abundant giving. And we're still going to put that to missions because I believe that missions is the heartbeat of God, that He leaves the 99 to find the one. We believe as a church here, when we talk about money, when we collect our offering, when we talk about these things, we say it every week. We do it for a reason, and it's not to pay the pastor. It's not to keep the lights on. We give so that people can know Jesus here, there, and everywhere. That's what it's about. The Bible says the name of Jesus is lifted up. I will draw all men unto me. And we give so that Jesus can be lifted up here from our church, that Jesus can be lifted up from the churches around us and around our area, and that Jesus can be lifted up on the other side of the world. That's why we give. And so if you're already tithing and you already support one missionary, we want to encourage you, and I know this is a sacrifice, but I believe that God will honor it, and we want to invite you. $25 a month will allow us to pick up another missionary. It'll be a sacrifice, but it'll be worth it. And I believe that as we begin to honor these things and as we begin to live out these biblical principles, we're going to begin to win with money. And the beautiful thing is, the more that we win with money, the more we can give. The more that we have that there, the more we can take care of when a family member says, hey, this is going on, and they're not actually coming to you for money, because that's not always healthy. But when they just say, hey, this is going on, because we've begun to win with money, we'll be able to pull it aside and say, hey, and we can give it to them without them even asking. Or something comes up with a family in the church, and we can say, hey, we want to help take care of them. Hey, we want to help do this. When things are happening in our community, when things happen, as we begin to win with money, we can begin to help other people. And there's nothing better. I think it was Booker T. Washington that said the people who are the happiest are those who do the most for others. And that's why we're preaching about this month. Winning with money. It's not about us, but it's about making a difference for others.